Good morning. Greetings, everyone. Ken Phelps here with the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to the third annual Market Watch Business Summit presented by Bank of America. So we'll go through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started this morning. Please double check that your mics are muted and your cameras are off. This will ensure everyone can see and hear our presenters as best as possible. If you have a question or comment at any point during the meeting or presentation, we're going to ask that you submit that using the chat function. I'm going to share screen real quick and show you just a couple of housekeeping items to help you accomplish that. So if you will mouse over your screen while we have shared screen, you should see your control panel pop up like it is at the top here in this example. The More button with the ellipsis at the top right of the control panel there, if you click that, that will drop down a drop-down menu, and the very top item there is the chat. So if you go ahead and do that now, click the chat and get that opened up, that will be where we'll take all our questions today. It'll help us moderate that, make sure we see critical issues that may pop up throughout the program. So if you'll do that, we'll make sure we get to as many questions as we can throughout the meeting. We want to make sure to provide the information that you are looking for this morning during today's Market Watch Business Summit. So with that housekeeping out of the way, my pleasure now to welcome and introduce our moderator for today's program. He's the Managing Director of Government and Community Affairs for NASCAR, Mr. Jordan Gelati. Jordan, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks, Ken, and thanks everybody for joining us for this third annual Market Watch Business Summit presented by Bank of America. We have a great program for you this morning. As everybody is probably aware, this program is a cooperative effort of two organizations of which I'm proud to serve in the leadership, the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce and Team Volusia Economic Development Corporation. I'd like to introduce the two leaders from those organizations to say a brief few words about the cooperation between the two organizations with this program and within the community. And we'll start with Nancy Kiefer, President and CEO of Daytona Regional Chamber.
Thanks, Jordan. It is absolutely a pleasure to collaborate this morning with our Market Watch. We've been doing this with Team Volusia for a few years now, and we certainly value our very respectful relationship with Team Volusia in showcasing Volusia County assets to business prospects that are coming into the community. Keith and I regularly communicate. We serve on each other's boards, and we do this to ensure that we're not duplicating resources and that we're really working together on behalf of our community as a whole. So as always, we have a wonderful relationship, and Keith, I'll turn it over to you to say a few remarks, but thank you for partnering with us today on this great program.
Thanks, Nancy. Keith is, as everybody's probably aware, President and CEO of Team Volusia. So thanks, Keith, for sharing a few words from Team Volusia.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Ken, for making all these arrangements. Nancy said a lot of the positive things I wanted to say about our relationship and our collaboration. But it is a great day to be looking forward and putting the challenges of 2020 in the rearview mirror. We've all had challenges in 2020. And it's especially appropriate that I get to offer a comment after Nancy, my good friend and colleague who presides over the of Team Volusia's most reliable and resourceful partners, the Daytona Regional Chamber. And it's widely known in economic development circles that all successful deals can be defined in a single word, and that is collaboration. And our two organizations collaborate almost daily. Sometimes our partners bring us a prospect, sometimes we bring a prospect to our partners. For instance, Nancy and I will be meeting with a British company on Thursday. A couple of weeks ago, we met with one of Nancy's companies, and then before that, we jointly worked on a very successful Colombian relocation, or actually expansion from Colombia to the area. So, you know, it's not about who wins a project, it's all about collaborating and teamwork. And I might say that our other team members and our other partners are also presenting today, FPL, Advent Health, and Zgraph. So we couldn't close a project without collaborative efforts. And I'm very pleased that Nancy arranged Dr. Jerry Parrish. He's a great speaker. And again, I'm going to turn the program over to Jordan, but it is a pleasure to again work with the Daytona Regional Chamber in producing and bringing the community the Market Watch Business Summit. Thank you very much. And now Jordan, our newly elected chair of Team Volusia, will take over.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, everyone.
So programs like this couldn't happen without the support of our sponsors, and we're pleased to welcome our sponsors to say a few words this morning. We'll start with our presenting sponsor, Bank of America. Please welcome Market President Peter Menino.
Hey, Jordan, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be a part of the event today. I sincerely hope that you and your families are all safe and healthy and have weathered 2020 as best as possible. This event is a prime example of how the people and the organizations that are represented here are what makes Daytona and Volusia a special place. We're honored to be a part of today's event. And I just wanted to take a moment to highlight some of our community engagement throughout this year. Early in the pandemic, my company was proud to offer an additional $100 million in philanthropic support across the country to help organizations and people around basic needs, critical needs. As I'm sure we can all agree, this year has been full of unexpected challenges, many of them in the middle of this year focused around racial tension, economic injustice, social injustice. And you may have read that in June, right after the killing of George Floyd, Bank of America committed $1 billion over the next 4 years to help communities with minorities that were largely greater impacted by the pandemic to get ahead around areas of healthcare, small business assistance, job creation, affordable housing. And we're on a mission right now to deploy those funds over the next 4 years in an effort to help minority communities adversely affected by the pandemic. I'm going to ask for your help at the end. I also wanted to mention, though, that among our community support that many people are not aware of is that we run a $1.6 billion portfolio of investments in what's called CDFIs, or Community Development Financial Institutions, which offer essentially credit and loans to businesses and individuals that would not otherwise qualify for those credit facilities through traditional lenders like ours. We're happy to have that portfolio to help those businesses and those people in the communities get ahead. I'm going to ask for your help, though. Around that $1 billion commitment that I mentioned a moment ago, $200 million of that money over the next 4 years has been earmarked for investments in minority-owned businesses. And we're doing that through private equity firms and venture capitalists, where we take a small position in a company of no more than 5% to help give minority entrepreneurs access to capital that they need. And again, they may not have otherwise had access to. I'm asking for your help in that if you know of any private equity investors, venture capitalists in your area or in other parts of the country, I would love to be introduced to them to see if there's a way that Bank of America can partner to deploy the funds that I'm talking about right now. Ken has asked, or has offered rather, to be a conduit for anybody that might need to get in touch with us for anything. But on behalf of Bank of America, proud to support the event today. And Ken, I know you have a short video to
canceled my order.
Cue that up.
The racial and economic disparities in this country have only been widened by the coronavirus and amplified by the most recent acts of injustice. That's why Bank of America has committed $1 billion over 4 years to address critical gaps in affordable housing, access to healthcare, employment and job skills, and the resources small businesses need to succeed. We can do more to further advance racial equality and economic opportunity for all.
Thanks, Peter. We really appreciate Bank of America in the community and in supporting today's program. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our virtual event sponsor, Advent Health, with comments by Community Outreach Representative Ida Babazada. Ida, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. As Jordan mentioned, I'm Ida. I'm the Outreach Representative for Advent Health, and we are so honored to be a sponsor of today's Market Watch Business Summit presented by Bank of America. Although we're not able to be together in person, I'm very thankful that we're able to connect virtually. So I can't think of a year that is more important to focus on all that we have to be thankful for. So thank you to Team Volusia, the Daytona Chamber, and all the Chamber members here today for what you do in our community. 2020, as some of you all have mentioned earlier, certainly has brought with it some new challenges that we couldn't have imagined a year ago. So I'm excited to be here and learn from the experts. So thank you again for having us. Thank you to the Chamber, Team Volusia, for bringing us all together for this morning's program. Thank you.
Thanks, Ida. We're also proud to have the support of two other member businesses for today's program, Advent Health Advantage Plans, as well as Halifax Health. Thank you to everyone for making this morning's event possible. Following our presentations this morning, we'll have a moderated Q&A session. Please post your questions in the chat, as Ken pointed out earlier in the program, and we'll get to as many as possible. As a reminder, for those that maybe joined us a minute or two late, please mute your microphone and turn off your camera so everyone can clearly see and hear our presenters. And without further ado, let's get into the local insights portion of today's event. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists, Crystal Stiles and Matt Fehrmann. Crystal Stiles is the Senior Director of Economic Development for Florida Power and Light, which includes leading the company's new innovation hub, 35 Mules. Crystal joined FPL in 2012 following a decade-long career in economic development, representing communities in multiple states. Since joining FPL, Crystal continues to lead and advance Florida's statewide economic development strategy and the visibility of the company's economic development program, both within Florida and nationwide. The program has been recognized many times, including its placement on the Site Selection magazine's list of top 10 utilities in economic development. Crystal has been recognized by numerous organizations, including Development Counselors International, the Florida Economic Development Council, and Consultant Connect. Crystal holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communications from Mary Baldwin College in Staunton, Virginia, and a Bachelor of Arts and Masters of Business Administration from Florida Atlantic University. She resides in Martin County with her two teenage daughters, one of whom is a freshman at Florida State University. Welcome, Crystal. Matt Fehrmann is the Vice President of Business Development at Zgraph Digital Marketing. He's been exclusively focused on custom web design, branding, and online advertising management for 15 years. He's worked with hundreds of clients and currently manages a client online advertising budget in excess of $250,000. He has a bachelor's degree in business management from Southeastern University and has received additional certifications from UC Berkeley, Google, and Facebook for digital marketing operations. And welcome, Matt. Crystal, we'll have you lead off and tell us a little bit about Florida Power and Light and some of the things you have planned for the coming year.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jordan. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. Hopefully I'm sharing my screen okay. This Zoom world is new to us, even though we've been virtual since March. Zoom is not an FPL platform, so I've been struggling through it a little bit. But it is wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you so much for that great introduction and for highlighting my freshman at Florida State. I'm so proud of my Seminole. I do hail from Virginia, but I'm a Floridian for 11 years, and I think that gets me to be able to claim native status. My team at FPL is tasked with bringing new business to the state of Florida and supporting existing business that's already here. We do that in strong partnership with the Daytona Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Team Volusia, and many, many other economic development stakeholders across the state. And, you know, as all of you know, I'm sure energy plays a critical role to the growth of our state. So I thought what I would do is spend a few minutes this morning just providing you with an overview of how FPL works hard every day to deliver America's best energy value, which includes energy that's affordable, reliable, and clean, which is absolutely critical to the success of our state. Awesome. As many of you already know, FPL is part of the NextEra Energy Company. NextEra is a Fortune 200 company, and we're really proud that it's ranked #1 in the electric and gas utilities industry on Fortune's list of most admired companies, and we've achieved that 13 out of the last 14 years. FPL and our sister company serve customers only here in Florida, and we recently received approval to merge those two companies into a single Florida electric utility. Our sister company, pictured here in green, is NextEra Energy Resources, and that company is the world's largest generator of renewable energy from wind and sun, and also a world leader in battery storage. FPL is the largest energy company in Florida, serving more than 5.1 million customers across 35 counties. Even though, and Volusia County certainly knows this well because we don't serve the entire community, but that doesn't matter. Just because we don't provide energy to every county in Florida, we still work with every local economic development organization in the state because we have a commitment to continuously move Florida forward. There's a lot of services we can actually provide to companies that may be considering locating out of our service territory, and we support them as well. We have access to many partner organizations. As Keith pointed out in his opening, collaboration is key. And then they have access to our poweringflorida.com website, which connects them with property and resources and research that can help them make a decision for Florida. My company would much rather have a business choose Orlando, for example, than Atlanta, because a company growing in Atlanta or Tallahassee or Tampa, while they may not be an FPL customer, they're good for the state of Florida. And as I mentioned earlier, FPL is committed to delivering America's best energy value, which is really important for companies that care about power, and for manufacturing and for larger distribution facilities like the types that you have in Volusia County. This is becoming more and more important. So we're really focused on being clean, reliable, and affordable. So focusing a little bit on what we've done to ensure that Floridians, all Floridians, have access to clean energy. We're consistently one of the cleanest electric utilities in the state. We recently announced our intentions to install our 30 by 30 plan, which I'm sure Linda Webster has mentioned to all of you, to install 30 million solar panels by 2030. And in fact, right here in Volusia, we have the FPL Pioneer Center that we completed in 2019. Hopefully you're all familiar with that. We also recently rolled out FPL Solar Together, which is the largest community solar program in the country and makes solar power and renewable energy accessible to every Floridian, regardless of if they own their property. And in addition to solar, we're building the world's largest solar-powered battery to deliver customers even more clean energy, which is really a key. When the sun is not shining, battery storage is how we unlock that renewable energy. And we're even exploring innovative green hydrogen as a future energy source, which could really unlock 100% carbon-free electricity. FPL's energy grid is the most reliable in the United States and has been awarded, as you see here, several accolades around that. It's not by accident. Since 2006, we have invested billions of dollars in hardening our grid to make it more resilient to Florida's extreme weather. That's something that we talk to businesses about every day. If you're not already in Florida, you may be a little concerned about hurricanes. And so we have a lot of conversations with companies that are considering our state about business continuity and restoration following storms. So the investments that we've made in our grid have made that story much stronger. We've improved day-to-day reliability for customers, and we're able to restore much faster. We're also building the smartest energy grid in the country. We have more than 5 million smart meters deployed on our grid and over 160,000 intelligent devices, which makes it easier for us to predict and restore after power outages. It's always, it's always better and easier to repair something before devastating damage has happened. So, we're able to restore proactively or actually avoid outages because of these smart devices that are there. And then when an outage does occur, we're able to restore much faster because we know where it is much more quickly. We're able to identify the problem much more quickly. So, we often, if you're on the inside at FPL, you know that we think of ourselves as a technology company that happens to sell energy. And that's simply because of the vast amount of technology that we've deployed to help us do our jobs better. At the same time, these days we're using a lot of really neat, innovative technology like drones and robots to help us with our infrastructure, be our eyes in the sky when it's not safe to be there, and go into places in the ground that maybe we couldn't actually get to with manpower. And we're making all these investments, as I continue to say, by keeping our rates the most affordable. Residential bills are 30% below the national average, but what my team really focuses on, and I know what Team Volusia and every business customer is focused on, is our industrial and commercial rates, which are over 45% below the national average. The FPL Economic Development Team is committed that power costs will never be a barrier to a company choosing Florida to grow their business. And so we even offer 2 incentive rates, electric incentive rates for new businesses, for growing businesses, and for businesses that are going to add new jobs for our state. So our Office of Economic Development was actually built to help our state climb out of the 2008 recession, the Great Recession. We were established in 2011, and since then, the team at FPL has made more than a $90 billion impact on the state's economy, helping companies grow that are pledging to create more than 30,000 jobs. Our best-in-class team is helping Floridians navigate this newest economic crisis and help move Florida forward. We're investing more than $1 million in a new workforce development program that will fund laptops for individuals who enroll in rapid certification programs, getting those individuals that were most impacted by the pandemic back to work and into our workforce. We're working on online solutions to help all of our communities feature virtual tours of their properties that are positioned for economic development, to showcase Florida's top project locations to our partners without the need for travel. And we believe that that's going to be ongoing even beyond the pandemic. I think that the way we do our economic development business is changing. And I think there will be a lot more virtual pre-work. There will always be a need to have boots on the ground, to have community meetings, to get to know people, to see the infrastructure and kick the dirt. But I think there will be a greater expectation that virtual and digital tools are in place that will provide that introduction. When I first got into the economic development business, there was a big debate on, what do you put on your website? Do you put everything about your community on your website so that somebody visits your website, they look at it, and then they move on to the next community because they didn't find what they need? Or do you just put a little bit so that it gets them interested and then they have to call you? Well, people didn't call. So the more information you put out there virtually, the better it is for your community, the more excited that businesses can get about locating in your community. And so the team at FPL is committed to helping all of our communities have those resources. And as Jordan mentioned in my introduction, we just launched my new favorite project at FPL, which is our 35 Mules Innovation Hub, which is really designed to help move the state's entrepreneurial system forward and focus on those tiny startups, growing Florida's newest generation of business. In September, we admitted 6 companies from 70 applications. Those applications came from around the world. We had 3 countries and 9 US states represented in the applicant pool. And our 6 startups are doing incredible work, many in the energy sector, but it wasn't a requirement for them to welcome us or to join us at the incubator. They just had to be early stage, and we had to be really excited about the founders and excited to work with them. So we've had them in our space since September, and I can't wait for you all to get to meet them, and hopefully eventually when we can all be back together, come and tour that facility. So this year alone, the Office of Economic Development at FPL has supported 22 businesses that chose to grow or expand in Florida. 3 of those were right here in Volusia County. And currently we have 4 prospective companies that we're supporting you all in. Hopefully they're going to choose Volusia County in early 2021, and we'll have more wins wins there. But we appreciate the ability to partner on projects like power flow systems and working with tech companies like Oralis. Those are tremendous additions to your community, and congratulations to all of you for continuing to help those companies grow and find success in the community. And so just as we close, really, we're all thinking as we come to the end of 2020, we're all thinking about the story of the year, which really largely was a pandemic that changed the way that we all did work. And just to leave you with the fact that FPL really focuses on our duty to our customers, regardless of what's happening in the world. And we take that very seriously. And our approach to the pandemic was no different than our approach to hurricane recovery and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to help our customers succeed. And we did implement a number of new programs this year to help our struggling customers. Specifically in September, we announced a plan to offer direct relief to our customers that were significantly behind on their bills due to pandemic unemployment. And just very recently, I'm really proud that the Public Service Commission in Florida authorized us to roll out our Main Street Recovery Program, which will boost small businesses. And qualifying small businesses can receive a monthly 10% credit on the energy charge portion of their bill while the program is active through December of 2021. And also FPL and NextEra Energy and all of our companies have donated around $5 million for emergency funding. In Florida, funds are helping partner organizations working on the front lines of the crisis to provide critical support to the most vulnerable members of our communities. Thank you so much for the ability to be here with you today and share a little bit about FPL and specifically about our economic development program and all that we're doing to help move our state forward. We appreciate our partnership with the Daytona Chamber and with Team Volusia and with all of you. Thanks so much. Jordan.
Thanks, Crystal. And to your point on hurricanes and concerns folks have with those kinds of weather incidents, I think it's always reassuring when we see so many personnel and resources staged here in the community ahead of time to know that you all are planning ahead and working through that. So thanks for the great presentation this morning. For the second portion of our local forecast on digital business transformation, we'll turn to Matt Fehrmann. And Matt, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to participate in this discussion with all of you this morning. And I really hope that our talk sparks creative ways to delight your customers and grow your business. So I'm here to talk today about digital transformation, which is the integration of digital technology into your business. And that can take many different shapes and forms. But the bottom line is this: digital technology will improve how you deliver value to your customers, and it's going to make you stand out. It also solves problems during COVID that your business faces, which we'll get to in a moment. But beyond that, it's a cultural change. Anyone who has gone through the implementation of digital technology into their business, I mean, even this Zoom call, the fact that we're all meeting this morning virtually, knows that it's a cultural change, and it requires your organization to continually challenge the status quo, experiment often, and sometimes be comfortable with failure. I won't ask Ken if a Zoom call has ever failed, but I've had it close out on me, and I've had pretty much everything you can think of happen. This digital transformation sometimes means walking away from long-standing business practices and processes that companies were built upon in favor of relatively new practices that are still being defined. And I came up with a list of examples of digital transformation. And as you can see, they really run the gamut. So we'll talk through some of these. And think about your own company, your business, and how some of these might add value, not only for you, but your employees and your customers. So e-commerce is probably the biggest one, online versus in-person or phone ordering. You know, I think of food, I think of the McDonald's app, the Target app, Publix Instacart for grocery delivery. Number two, point of sale systems. I've seen a lot of small businesses upgrading their terminal, their cash register, to accept contactless payments, such as Apple Pay, so that you can wave your phone in front of the terminal and it automatically goes ahead and charges the card. Think about, for those of you in B2B, electronic signatures on contracts, such as Right Signature. Think about live chat and chat bots. So this could be a website live chat for your business. And my favorite way to utilize live chat, by the way, is live chat that leads to a phone call. The whole conversation does not have to happen there on your website. It could start there. It could be that someone has a basic question, basic inquiry, and then they kind of get pushed into a phone call. Think about another one, cloud storage. With so many of us working remotely, working from home, having to log into a local server isn't really in the cards for us. And so using something like Dropbox or Google Drive may be a really practical way to digitally transform your business. A lot of salespeople are already used to using a CRM, a customer relationship management software such as Salesforce, versus a spreadsheet or a Rolodex to keep track of contacts. Certainly, hospitals, medical systems have already transitioned to electronic medical records using software like CareCloud versus paper charts. Video meetings, as we talked about. And I'll make one more observation about a Zoom call like this. Zoom calls aren't new. They weren't new when the pandemic hit. But a lot of us participated in conference calls and we didn't turn on our cameras. I think what's happened is a lot of us are way more comfortable with turning on our cameras. We've adjusted our backdrops and our lighting so that we look more favorable. And so that's another way that businesses have transformed. Corporate instant messaging is another big one, using Slack or Microsoft Teams to stay in touch while we can't be together physically in an office. A human resources intranet is another way. They call it enterprise social. And that would be a way for your employees to communicate with each other in a more social way to build camaraderie, celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and things like that. And training videos are a great way, again, absent of being in person for those of you who can't, to train staff. But when I think about digital transformation, I think about how it's affected my own life. And I think probably the biggest three areas would be Starbucks, I'm a little ashamed to say, Walgreens prescriptions, and Slack. So Starbucks, you can order on the app, you can just go pick it up. And they might even greet you and say, hey, Matt, thanks for coming in today, because your name's printed on the ticket. Walgreens prescriptions, I think it's really great that pharmacies, allow you to order through an app. That's an example of digital transformation for their organization. And Slack, Slack was recently bought by Salesforce for over $20 billion, announced on December 1st of this year. And so this is just another way that in my own life, we've improved our team at Zgraph to be able to communicate. So you want to ask yourself where to start. And I would say start with your customer's concern. If safety during COVID is a concern, with contactless payments, not wanting to touch a credit card terminal, start there. If your employee's concern is being able to communicate and build camaraderie, then again, consider an app like Slack or something like an intranet for your employees. Whatever it is, address it creatively if possible, and stay the course, but modify what you're doing. I want to go through just 3 really quick examples of local organizations and kind of how they have coped with COVID and kind of some of their wins. I wanted to kind of champion this. So Stonewood Grill, local restaurant, a lot of people know about it, locally founded. So during COVID, what they did was they launched curbside takeout, which they call Stonewood at Home. And that's been successful. Now, curbside takeout isn't new, but if there's any restaurateurs on the call and you haven't transitioned to this, there's a lot of pent-up demand for it. And you've probably seen as well delivery being a much bigger thing as people work from home and they maybe don't go out for lunch. So another thing that Stonewood did, and many restaurants here locally have done, is included ChowNow, DoorDash, and Uber Eats as delivery partners. So think about how your business could partner with other organizations that are kind of ready to go and expand your business. Likewise, what they did was they implemented online ordering for e-commerce, something that previously they had not been doing. And they also ramped up email marketing, and you might want to apply that to your business as well. I've noticed, by the way, I have to compliment Ken and Nancy and the chamber. I've just noticed that the emails have just, the quality has been just better and better and better. And every time I open an email from the chamber, it just seems like it's just more finely tuned so that I can find exactly what I want to find in it. But a lot of restaurants are benefiting from email marketing. You can apply that to your business as you might. And they actually launched a new product category, which was holiday bundles. So think about how you could launch a new category of product literally to address customers' concerns during the pandemic. These holiday bundles were to address the concern that a lot of people would not want to come out to a restaurant to celebrate Thanksgiving or to celebrate Christmas. You know, you're thinking about your grandparents, you're thinking about your elderly parents, might not want to be out and about, even with all of the sanitization and hygiene and things that are going on. And so these bundles have been a really big success. I think about another company here locally, and this applied to us at Zgraph too, which was going paperless. So Southern Title, what they've transitioned to paperless closing, and they had done that prior to COVID, but I witnessed this myself, you know, how it reduced the amount of required in-person meetings, which does what? It addresses a customer concern. So I thought that was a big win. Something else I noticed is that, and speaking with them, that they had invested in long-term website optimization so that I suppose as people typed in certain search terms, their website would pop up. And one thing I learned is that I guess as interest rates, you know, drop and real estate activity increases, Google's seen an increased search volume for title agencies. So you could think of, you know, how you could position your business for something unforeseen like a pandemic. And then I wanted to put a nonprofit here in the list. And this one is Daytona Dream Center. I thought this was really interesting. So they raise funds throughout the year to help homeless and people struggling to meet basic food needs. But during COVID, they had to transition the way that they deliver food. And in doing so, they actually grew their impact. And so normally they were having people come to them to give food and clothing and things like that. But instead, they leveraged it to go out into the community and kind of transform the way that they work. And so they partnered in two cases with one Daytona for a couple large scale food drops where like people drive up, they pop their trunk, food is safely like given to them in the trunk of their car. And then they also leveraged the crisis to partner with national food organizations who had the food ready to go, and effectively they were able to multiply their donations. So I thought that was a really good way to transform. So last but not least, came up with, and I'm going to go through this really quick, 21 ways to digitally transform your business for 2021. How about that? So they're broken into just a handful of categories. So one would be a website. And so think about mobile, consider, as we talked about, live chat and chatbots, consider pent-up demand on a search engine, consider upgrading your visuals, getting a new headshot for all the team members of your company, because people are just going to see them on your website more than they see them in person. Number two category, driving search traffic to your website. Now is a great time to update your website content. I think Crystal actually talked about this in economic development and how it's important to put a lot of content and not withhold too much. So update site content and blogs, establish outside links. Those of you who represent local businesses or local divisions of businesses, make sure you look up your Google My Business account and claim it for free, and make sure that the reviews are being responded to, and make sure that the information is up to date and accurate. And consider adding in paid ads and remarketing into the mix. As well, get social in an engaging way. So keep a consistent schedule, post regularly, leverage customer photos and videos for your business. Restaurants do a great job at this, but those of us in the B2B space don't always do a good job at that. So that this would be a friendly nudge to consider getting some good photos and testimonials from customers and using that in your advertising. Run contests and promotions and consider targeted ad dollars. And then just like I talked about, use email to stay in touch. Use it during the sales process. If you're retail, grow your list. Consider doing flash deals. Consider building like an e-club where there's member-only content, even though it's free to join. And be sure to at least send monthly emails. And last but not least, incorporate new technology, whether it's marketing automation, geofencing, etc. In closing, double down on your digital innovation. Again, it can take the form of many different ways and different forms, but it's more important than ever. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share today.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks to both you and Crystal for some really great presentations. Just a reminder, we'll ask you both to stick around for Q&A at the end of the program. And so for folks that might have a question, the chat is open, and we ask that you log in those questions there. And perhaps it's only fitting or typical for 2020 that we have had I think a technical issue with the video for our next presenter, but and Matt, that wasn't planned, but we'll welcome by phone Dr. Jerry Parrish and for a big picture perspective from the Florida Chamber. So Dr. Jerry Parrish is the Chief Economist and Director of Research for the Florida Chamber Foundation. In that role, he was responsible for conducting in-depth analysis on the Florida economy and on solutions to help secure Florida's future. Dr. Parrish previously was the Chief Economist and Director of the Center for Competitive Florida at Florida Tax Watch. Prior to that position, he served as the Associate Director of the Center for Economic Forecasting Analysis at Florida State University, and he has many years of experience in the private sector in management roles at the international manufacturing companies. Dr. Parrish is currently an adjunct instructor in the Masters in Applied Economics program at Florida State University. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Business and Economics from Auburn, an MBA from Bellarmine University, and a Master of Science in Economics from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and a PhD in economics from Auburn as well. He regularly publishes research reports and articles on the Florida economy and Florida's competitiveness. I know he's been a great resource for us here at NASCAR over the years, and appreciate you, Jerry, joining us this morning.
Thank you all for having me this morning. Sorry for the technical issues, but you're probably looking at a picture of me up there if you're looking at the first slide. And I want to make a couple of comments before I show you some slides. Of course, I'm an economist. I'm going to show you a bunch of slides today. But they asked me to talk about what's going on with the state and the national and even some of the international situations that are going on. You got to think about, we up here in Tallahassee think about this a lot. The state's going to be looking for about $3.4 billion this year. We have to balance our budget. You saw that Governor DeSantis had vetoed about $1 billion worth of items that would be in this year's fiscal year. But we're going to be about $3.4 billion shy this year and about $2 billion next year. And so the legislature will scramble around. They'll sweep even more trust funds than they normally do. But you're liable to see some cutbacks with state agencies, and certainly that's very likely to happen to our universities and our state colleges. And so it's really going to affect everybody around the state. Well, I always say the best way to raise more tax revenue is to create more jobs. And fortunately, a lot of the people over at the legislature and the governor's office believe the same thing. So that's what we're working to do up here, and I know that's what our economic developers was able to hear Crystal this morning, and from the private sector and all around the state are working on right now. So I appreciate what they're doing. But it is going to have an effect on us, and you may see some drops in services at the local level as well. But I will tell you, I'm bullish on what's happening in Florida. If they'll throw up the next slide, I want to show you the front page of the Florida scorecard to remind you where we were before COVID hit. Before COVID, we had a $1.1 trillion economy, and that would put Florida, if it was an independent country, at the 17th largest economy in the world. And that's kind of cool because I got the chance to speak to all the European Union consuls not long ago, and And there's, of course, many of them. And I was able to tell them that Florida is a bigger country. If we were a country, we'd be bigger than most of them over there. Certainly, we're not bigger than Germany or, some of the bigger countries, but we're bigger than a lot. And a lot of people don't understand how big a deal Florida is. But we had about 900 net new people a day moving to the state. We had, $1.19 million worth of adjusted gross income per hour moving in the state. You can see that at the bottom left tile on there. It's called income migration, and that comes from How Money Walks. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but if you click on the link on the Florida scorecard, up will pop typically a chart or a live link. This one, you'll have a live link directly to their website where you can see where people are moving into the state, weighted by money, and where they're moving out. And you can do it for your county as well. I encourage you to take a look at that. It really shows how competitive your county is compared to others. But you got to remember, since 2015 up until February this year, Florida created more than 1 out of every 11 U.S. jobs. And that bodes really well for Florida's recovery. I do believe Florida is going to be quicker than most as far as recovering our jobs. I'm going to talk a little more about that in a minute. But you can see what the front page of the Florida scorecard looks like. We added some COVID tiles on the top of the scorecard now, so there's even more tiles, more info. But, of course, it's at the state level. Also, there are 6 pillars of the Florida economy represented by that gray bar up there. Those are live links to even more levels of data. I encourage you to look at that. But if you look at the top right, it says View County Data. If you happen to click on Volusia County, if you'll show the next slide, you'll see what the front page of Volusia County looks like now on the Florida scorecard. Now remember that red means you're going in the right direction, red means you're going in the wrong direction, green means you're going in the right direction. And there are some things that are red here. Certainly the number of cases never goes down. Nobody's following people around, taking them off the list. The average daily new cases is up, as it is in most parts of the state. But you can see there's still some green there. And I encourage you to watch this. Every time job numbers come out, I do a video called Florida by the Numbers. And I'll be doing that on Monday. We'll get new job numbers this Friday. So I encourage you to look at that and then look at the updated tiles on the scorecard after that. Now, the next slide will show you where we are job-wise. This is a state look. We had more than 9 million non-farm jobs in the state of Florida, and we lost 1.1 million through March and April when we had things shut down. Now, you'll notice we've recovered more than half of our jobs in the state, but I want to remind everyone that we got back the easy half. There's still a lot of room to grow, a lot of room to recover jobs. That's why you see the higher unemployment rates and other issues that are going on in the labor market down there. And these are important because they're very important to our recovery. The next slide will show you the month-to-month. I don't show this a lot, month-to-month job gains, but there you can see the February through April, more than 1 million jobs lost. When things opened back up, we had a pretty good bump in May and June. And actually, other than August was a pretty light month. September and October, 50,000 jobs a month. That's a pretty good recovery when you compare it to other states. So I'm pretty pleased with the way Florida is doing it. This Friday, we'll come out with a new estimate for November. They'll revise the October number as they refine the data a little bit. It could go up, could go down, but I'm pretty pleased so far. But if you look at the next slide, it will show you by industry. And so all industries were down 4.5% jobs, but it won't surprise anybody. Leisure and hospitality is by far the largest loss. It was more than half of all jobs lost in Florida year over year up until this past month, and it just dropped below half. But what that percent of industry means, it basically means that of all the leisure and hospitality jobs that we had last year, about 1 in 6 is no longer there this year. And so we know that's really been what's hurt the most in the economy. We know the largest percentage drops have been in lower wage jobs in the state of Florida. Actually, you may not realize this, that there's more high wage jobs in the state of Florida now than there was in January. And high wage jobs by this calculation is anything 60,000 jobs and over. And, Florida was positive even before the U.S. is positive. The U.S. just barely turned positive just here within the last couple of weeks with the data that I've got. So you can see what the other industries are. You can see less than 2% loss year over year for 4 categories down there: financial activities, manufacturing, construction, education, and health services. A good sign. Certainly it's not a good sign if you're the one that lost the job, but overall for the state of Florida, that does mean we are recovering. And from bottom to top, it's almost the way that you see the recovery of all the jobs come back. One exception there in trade, transportation, and utilities is wholesale and retail trade. Retail, depending on what kind of retail you're in, has seen some job losses, and wholesale trade along with it. I think that'll be the next to the last before leisure and hospitality, as far as when we get the same number of jobs we had back in February of this year. Now, where is that happening in the state? This will set us up for what's going forward here. When we look year over year, you can see the percentages for all the counties, and it's a heat map. So the darker areas have lost the most jobs. Probably not a surprise to you. The Orlando metro area has been hard hit, so has southeast Florida, because the hardest hit areas typically are the ones that depend the most on visitors from other states and other countries. And to be more specific, more fly-in visitors than drive-in visitors. Certainly we've lost some jobs in Northwest Florida, tourists coming to the beach, but the majority of them actually come in by car. So we haven't seen the high percentages as we have in the Orlando metro area especially. But what's important about this, here's my concern about what's going on all over the country. And you've seen this in Florida. If you'll show the next slide, there's still open jobs. Matter of fact, the open jobs are going up. 359,200 open jobs right now in the state of Florida. And 659,000 people that are unemployed. That's getting better. Both of those are getting better, because they're green, and you can find that on the Florida scorecard. What concerns me here is the drop in the labor force. And I'm going to tell you, for Florida, the drop year over year has been 314,000 people that are no longer in the labor force. And if you're not familiar with these numbers, what that means is you either are working or looking for a job. You add those two numbers together, that's your labor force. Now, the labor force in Volusia County is only down 1.6%, but Florida, that represents 314,000 people is 3%. Now, who are those folks? In a lot of cases, what we find has been females who have dropped out of the labor force to take care of their kids because their kids weren't in school. That's been a lot of them. We don't have really good state data on that. That's kind of relying on the national data. But, in no doubt, in my mind, that's some productive people that, Florida could use. We've got 359,200 open jobs right now. The more jobs we fill, the better Florida's GDP is, the quicker our recovery is from this. So, whether those people are gone short term out of the labor force, and maybe schools will open up, stay open and be open now next year when certainly we have a vaccine that's widely distributed, and they'll come back to the labor force. Certainly that's going to help them, and it's going to help the workforce and the recovery for Florida. Now let's take a look at the outlook. I want to talk about this. This is important. I don't talk a lot about the national and international outlook, but you got to remember we're really dependent on trading, selling and buying stuff from other countries. And so let's take a quick look at what's going on. The next slide I call my puzzle slide. And I want to remind you that, international trade is more than just imports and exports. It's services, it's visitors, it's foreign direct investment. And I know that's important to our economic developers, and it's really important to your community. I don't know how much most people realize that, but certainly it is important. So what we need to do is really take a look at how our trading countries are doing. So let's take a look at that now. If you'll show the next slide, I call this the flag slide. And this is our top global partners. And I think this is really important because, if one of their economies or all of their economies are doing poorly, it's going to hurt Florida. And so let's take a look at, you can see Florida origin exports, top country go to Brazil, Canada, Mexico, all the way down. Services exports are a big part of the Florida economy. Those are harder to quantify than goods exports because we got really good goods exports data. Services exports, though, we're dependent on UK, Canada, China. Not many people realize that China is a big, buyer of Florida's services exports. Japan and Mexico is in there. So you see, in the other places, China being the largest importer or importing, country we import from shouldn't surprise anyone. But you can see that Mexico and Canada are showing up a lot. The UK shows up as far as, visitors, number 2 to Canada. Brazil's in there, Germany's in there for foreign direct investment, United Kingdom, Spain, France, and Switzerland. So let's take a look at how these countries are expected to do. So when I look at that, the next slide will show you the kind of the forecast of what those countries are doing. And this comes from our IMF, the International Monetary Fund. And what their 2020 estimate is of GDP, this is a drop in percentages from the year before. You can see only China is actually expected to increase in GDP. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of that is, personal protective wear and those kind of things. And so they were the only ones showing a growth of last year, but everybody else is down, 5, 6, 7, 8%, 9, and 9 and 9.8. That's big. Those are big, big drops when you're talking about dropping a whole national economy by that. Now, the 2021 forecast, you can see, increase of 5.2%, 5.9 from the UK after a huge, huge drop. What does that mean, really? That means, even after the end of 2021, we're not going to be where we were at the end of 2019. So, as far as our demand for Florida goods, including tourism services, we get about 14 million visitors a year from other countries, including Canada. Canada's number 1, UK is number 2, you saw. That's a big deal for Florida because visitors, drop about $6 billion in state taxes here and about $5.3 billion worth of local taxes. And I know you guys have international visitors come in for races. You have people from, all over the world coming in for those kind of things, Rolex 24 and the big races. We got a bunch of folks from other states coming in for Bike Week and those kind of things. So, it certainly has affected the economy. But what you can expect is some recovery, and I believe there's a ton of pent-up demand. People still want to go places. They still want to do things. And so once you see a good many people getting this vaccination, which I'm very thrilled to say it looks like it's going to be a winner, that probably, certainly we won't get all our visitors back in 2021, but there is a ton of pent-up demand there for travel, international travel and otherwise. Certainly I know a lot of Floridians are taking advantage of the opportunity to go places in Florida where there's not so many people from other states and other countries. Now, I put a little column up there called revision. I wanted to show what direction they were going on, whether when they got revised for this October outlook, did it go up or did it go down? Interestingly enough, Canada, Mexico, the Latin American, Caribbean, UK all got revised up, a little stronger than what they had thought. Brazil and China and Japan went down. No huge revisions to these things, just wanted to kind of give you a sense of, who may be our heroes here. Anybody who's showing a strong 2021 with a plus beside it is probably your most likely targets for more visitors coming to Florida and leaving us that $6 billion that they leave us. And you got to love visitors. They do a couple things. One, they spend a lot of money, and 2, they don't tax our services very much. They don't put their kids in school. They typically don't interact with our law enforcement system here, and so that's some pretty good earnings that the state of Florida depends on. $6 billion out of a $94 billion budget, state budget. That's a big number. So I hope that they're coming back soon. Another thing that affects us a lot is the value of the dollar. And you got to be more specific than just the value of the dollar. You know, we've seen over the last few years the U.S. dollar has been pretty strong, mainly because we have positive interest rates and a lot of countries had negative interest rates. You know, negative interest rates when I was in grad school was something that was just a theoretical construct. Nobody ever believed that we would actually have them, but we have. So the next slide will show you the Florida dollar. This is done by the Dallas Federal Reserve. This is Florida's dollar, you know, weighted by the countries that we trade with. In other words, you know, it's weighted by China's currency by X% of, you know, our trade and all the other currencies. So it's actually, you know, this tells us where we are compared to our trading partners, and are our exports going to be more expensive or less. Certainly compared to 2018, they're going to be more expensive. But we track this every day on the Florida scorecard. You can see the Florida exchange rate tile on the left. I just cut it off of the Florida scorecard yesterday. So as far as the recovery, yeah, our stuff is going to be a little more expensive compared to our trading partners, but we're down off of the recent highs of 2016 and early 2020. So looks like the dollar is, you know, the Fed has signaled that they're going to keep interest rates low. Certainly that's going to help our housing market. You know, that's going to help a lot of things. Now, another thing we track every day is the probability of a Florida recession, and it's on the scorecard under our business climate and competitiveness pillar. So if you'll show the next slide, basically right now my probability that Florida will enter another recession in the next 9 months is 22.9%. And it went up a little bit. One of the things that bothered me and shows up in the formula is consumer sentiment has gone down again. You know, people are pessimistic because they're watching the national news and seeing the number of cases coming up, and probably, you know, they're thinking about maybe there's going to be another shutdown, those kind of things. I don't think there is. But you know, those things kind of play into it. You can see that around about the 1st of March, this thing went to 100% probability of a recession. And you can watch that every month. It's red, so it went up. But you can watch that. You know, 22.9% is not very high. But, you know, certainly it's worth watching. I don't believe we're going to go into another recession, but certainly there's a probability of it. Now, what's going to happen? What's going to happen in the near future? What's going to happen? What will help us? The next slide will show you a quote from Bank of America's head of global economics, a guy named Ethan Harris. This came out on December the 11th. I like this. I hope he's right. He said we think a $750 billion fiscal package could be coming soon. Certainly, those kind of things help. It helps people with spending money. You know, certainly we've got a lot of issues of people that have been out of work, you know, businesses that are on the verge of closing maybe in some cases. You know, at our Future of Florida Forum, we released a big research report that talked about small business, and we concentrated on those businesses of less than 100 employees. And what you got to know about that group is, you know, about a third of Floridians in the private sector work in those businesses who have less than 100 employees. But they're responsible for about right at 60% of all net new job creation. That's why I'm thrilled to see, you know, people like FPL and their 35 Mules project. I heard Crystal talking about that. I've been watching that. That's a really cool thing, because, you know, helping these young companies grow really is the path forward for Florida. Recruiting companies certainly is a great option, and we've done a lot of good. Unfortunately, our legislature has not you know, kept the foot on the gas on things like that I wish they would. But you got to remember, you know, when this recession hit, you know, I say it this way: the Federal Reserve saved the economy. You know, they liquefied the economy and it showed a lot of stability out there where people could get, you know, money and people could get credit and keep things going. You know, the Congress has to be responsible for feeding it. So, you know, the Federal Reserve saved the economy. The Congress fed it. Every time you see one of these fiscal packages come through, certainly a couple things happen. One, it adds to our debt, but right now it certainly is a lifeline for a lot of businesses. So if this does happen, certainly you'll see a lot more optimism, I think, and that consumer sentiment number come up. certainly with the now people are actually getting vaccinated, I believe that's going to be a good positive thing. Well, let's look a little longer term and what's going to happen to the state of Florida. If you'll show the next slide, this will show you the expected next 4 million people, where they're going to move to in the state of Florida. You know, some of the counties here, you see the darker counties have the highest percentage. And I've circled Volusia. You can see your neighboring counties. You can see where the top increases are going to be. And I'm going to tell you that I don't believe this 100% anymore, and I'm going to tell you exactly why here in a second. But take a look at it. According to this estimate, it comes from University of Florida's Bureau of Economic and Business Research. You know, the top 4 counties are going to get more than 1/3 of the population growth. And we say this could happen. This next 4 million people could happen as quickly as 2030, according to the Florida Chamber. So 7 counties get almost half of the growth. The top 17 out of Florida's 67 counties get more than 3/4 of the growth. Now, let me tell you why I think it's going to be a little different here, and I see it happening out there. You know, with the advent of COVID, and the speaker that came on right before me, Matt, talked about people working from home. You know, it's allowed people to move out in the country, and certainly they're doing it in Florida. I've talked to local chambers around the state, especially in the rural areas, and they say they've had more inquiries about people moving there than they ever have. And it's really dependent a lot on high-speed internet access. You know, do you have high-speed internet access? Certainly the schools are important and other things if they've got kids in the school age range. But what you're going to see here is probably a little lower percentage in the coastal counties and a little higher percentage in the rural counties is my forecast on this. So it's not going to change by millions and millions of people moving to the country, but certainly you're seeing it. I'm seeing it up here. I assume you're seeing it out there. You know, people in the urban areas are moving to the suburbs. Suburb people are thinking, hell, hey, it's getting too crowded here in my neighborhood. I'm going to move out into the country. And certainly, you know, that's been my desire the whole time, to live out in the country, have some chickens, and not have to drive into work. We got to do that for a couple of months at the Florida Chamber, but unfortunately, we're back in the office every single day now. But it has changed the game. It will actually help us, increase, excuse me, it'll help us with recruiting businesses from other states and other countries as some of the more rural areas get a little more populated. You know, there'll be a workforce out there that'll be attractive to companies that may want to move in. And so I really think that COVID's going to be a net positive for the state of Florida once we get our visitors back. You know, we do have companies and individuals still moving here, whether it's 900 net new people a day or not. Not real sure about that, but I can tell you it certainly is happening up here, and I guarantee you it's happening in other parts of the state of Florida. Now, another long-term issue, I just want to show you a new tool that I created up here at the Florida Chamber. Two of the things we work on all the time is we've got our Business Alliance for Early Learning, and we've got our Prosperity Project here. So I want to show you a new tool, and I hope you'll look at this, because this really is the long-term solution to economic development and population growth and a lot of things, and that's our education system. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see something called the Florida Gap Map. And this is done for every single every county in the state, every single zip code, and every public school that has a 3rd grade reading score. So if you go to thefloridagapmap.org, you can lay your mouse over any zip code. I just picked 32114. It shows that there's more than 3,000 kids living in poverty. That's more than half, 54.2% under 18 poverty rate. If you go to the next slide, I just picked off one of the schools in that zip code. And so you lay your mouse over the school, and up pops this little, bubble that says, their reading score is 33. That means 33% of those kids in that school are reading at grade level. And how many kids are not reading at grade level? Approximately 80. And so what a lot of people have done, and you can show the next slide if you want to. You can also kick out a list of all the schools in the county. What a lot of businesses have done is they've started adopting classrooms. They can say, hey, there's only 10 or only 27 or only X number of kids not reading at grade level. I can help that school. And so what we've asked our chamber members to do is take a look at their commute, where you live and where you work, and see if there's a school along the way, in one zip code or the other, or along the path that you take, that you and your company, maybe can adopt a classroom. And I always say, don't wait until they're in third grade to help them reading at third grade level. But you got to remember, why we do this is, kids typically in third grade, when you get to third grade, you go from learning to read to reading to learn. And if you're on track at that point in time, your trajectory of being successful is a lot, your probability is a lot higher, because you'll do better in school. You're more likely to stay in school, more likely to graduate from high school, and more likely to have a better time. And so it really is our way to work on this goal that we have for the Florida Chamber's blueprint. Florida Blueprint 2030 says, we want to reduce child poverty by less than half. We want to reduce it to less than 10% by 2030, and we work on that every day. Now, the last slide I'll show you, if you'll, is just to invite you to our Economic Outlook and Job Solution Summit. It's coming up here January 28th. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be 3 hours of me and my economist friends getting together, and a lot of people that really have a lot of insight into what's going on in the economy, what the future looks like. And so I'll be doing my yearly job forecast during this event. We'll be doing a lot of stuff, talking about how different parts of the economy work together and how Florida's going to recover from this recession and go back to creating jobs. You got to remember, we were creating 1 out of every 11 jobs. That's a big deal. Florida's about 5% of the U.S. economy. 1 out of 20 jobs would be average. We were doing almost double that at more than 1 out of 11 jobs. I'm confident that Florida's going to get back to that number, and so I hope you'll be able to join us at that event. Anyway, that's all the slides I had. I'll turn it back over to you guys. I know there may be some questions, and I'll be glad to answer them as long as you want to. But thank you very much for listening this morning.
And informative, so appreciate you sharing that presentation with us this morning. So we have some time for question and answers, and we'll call back Matt and Crystal to the camera to get the questions underway that are coming in from the chat. And one of these is probably initially here for you, Jerry. There's a question about, will vaccine distribution improve the recovery projections, or have you already factored that into some of your forecast numbers?
I will change my forecast numbers by the end of January when I do my Economic Outlook Summit. We will take that into consideration. I've always said that our recovery, I've always been on the pattern. People say, is it going to be a V? Is it going to be a W? Is it going to be an L? Going to be a K? Going to be this and that? I've always said it's a Nike swoosh pattern, because we have different industries coming back at different times. I will tell you that the vaccine availability is a little quicker than I had expected. And so I will up my visitor numbers. And of course, that will up the job numbers. That'll up the state revenue numbers, because I do believe that when we hit about May or June of next year and a substantial number of people have gotten vaccinations, then you're going to see this monster demand for travel come back. I think a lot of people are waiting on that. Hey, I got parents in their 80s. They won't go anywhere except the grocery store every 2 weeks or so. They won't even go out, and eat in restaurants or things. There's a lot of people like that, and especially with Florida having the number of older people that we have here, I think that's going to be a big deal. But you're going to see, every kid that wanted to go to Disney that their parents wouldn't let them go this last year, they're going to be back to Florida. I feel pretty confident, but it will accelerate that when I do my forecast in January. Absolutely.
Great, thanks. This next question is two-part and focused on Volusia County. We'll open it up to the panel and maybe ask if Keith Norton doesn't mind sharing a few thoughts. But what new companies will be moving to Volusia County in 2021? And of those new companies projected to look at Volusia County in 21, how many new jobs are estimated?
Would you like, Jordan, for me to take a stab at that? I'll be happy to.
Go for it, Keith. Yeah.
Good.
What you can share.
Sure. And that's the difficult thing, as Crystal will agree with me. If you have companies that are considering a location in Volusia County and they're still in negotiation and they're still at the final stretch of their site selection search, we really can't announce those companies. They haven't made the final decision. All I can tell you is that we do have several that are in negotiations now. And what's exciting is the companies represent diverse industry sectors, including aviation, aerospace, food processing, and medical, among others. So it will diversify the economy. Most are higher paid jobs. But so far in 2020, and we still have very few days to have companies make a final decision and announce. Right now, we've located 5 projects with a total of 285 announced jobs with a capital investment of $164 million, which is new to the county dollars and new to the county jobs. Plus, that does not include existing businesses which have expanded in Volusia County this year. These are only announcements that Team Volusia has actually worked on. One of them was worked on, of course, by the Daytona Regional Chamber and us, and that is a very aviation, aerospace-centric company. So we're excited about that. But, and these numbers also don't reflect the newly opened, and it opened in October 2020, Amazon Fulfillment Center, which announced 500 full-time jobs, and they will have at least as many seasonal employees, which are, I think, working there now, which makes it an employment center of over 1,000 people. So that is not in those numbers for the 2020 announcement, since we worked on Amazon for many years and they announced in 2019. But happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. Crystal, you can lend a hand because you are very apt at working projects with us and with the community, but I think you can say that we are working on a few exciting companies right now.
I'm happy to corroborate your story, Keith.
I'm using you as a prop.
No, I'm happy to do that. And I think that you really hit on a key to all of this, and that is diversity. You know, we know what happens when you have an economy that's built on 1 or 2 or even just 3 industry sectors. And so, you know, I think since all of us have been focused so keenly on economic development as we were coming out of the Great Recession as a state, all of our local economic development entities and really at all levels have focused on diversifying our economy so that you don't have one industry that's suffering and that challenges your community. And Volusia County has done a tremendous job of diversifying the economy. In fact, I think that Jerry, Dr. Parrish, has a diversity index. It'd be interesting to know where you fall on that diversity index. But yes, the battery projects, autonomous vehicles, I think will be an option for the east coast of Florida as we move forward, and particularly for sort of northeast Florida. And I put Volusia County in that geography because you're close enough to the north to take advantage of all the logistical infrastructure that comes with moving products to the bigger part of the country. I think those are going to really play a role in the coming year, but it's tremendous that the 4 projects we're working on with the Volusia County team now are all in different industries. And I think that's really important for us all to focus on as we move forward.
Thank you, Crystal.
Jerry, we know you can't speak for the governor's office, but curious what you might be hearing in Tallahassee as until the vaccine is more readily available to the general public, what you might be expecting from the governor's office as it relates to any new restrictions moving forward for businesses in Florida?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm sure we have some of our staff here in the chamber who know more than I do, but I think their message has been pretty consistent. We're not going to have a statewide shutdown. That's a relief to the businesses that I've spoken to, but we know there's different things going on. My hope is, given the hope of having the vaccine and getting it out quickly like they're going to do, that we don't need that. So I suspect there's not going to be anything like that, is my guess.
And then another question, you mentioned debt in your presentation. Are we on a collision course regarding debt, or can we handle it?
Well, that's a great question. The U.S. debt is a interesting thing. You know, we've got a lot of people, these modern monetary theory people, think that we can have an unlimited amount of debt. You know, you can have a whole lot of debt when interest rates are super low. But you got to remember, you know, I'm of the age where I remember when the federal government had a lot of problems paying off debts when interest rates went up. And the more we have, you know, the more it hurts making interest payments, and you end up with, you know, with cutbacks and those kind of things that aren't a big help to the economy. I will tell you, tax rate increases, those kind of things. So I'm concerned about it. I'm not overly concerned because the Fed has signaled for, you know, for quite a while they're planning on keeping interest rates low. But you know, if we ever ran across inflation or those kind of things, you know, who knows what would happen. But right now, I hate to see the debt, but I'm not overly concerned about us paying our bills right now.
Great. For those that might not be able to see the chat, there was a question about where to find more information about the Florida Chamber EO Summit on, and that is available on the Florida Chamber website, flchamber.com. And then I believe there's a question about the presentation's availability after the program. There's a recording of the program that's going to be available on the Daytona Regional Chamber YouTube channel, and it also available in next Monday's e-brief. Any other questions from our attendees today for the panelists? All right, well, we're really thankful for all of you sharing your time with us this morning. I think it's been an incredibly great and helpful program. For our presenters, Dr. Parrish, Crystal Stiles, Matt Fehrmann, we really appreciate you sharing your expertise and insight. For our sponsors, Bank of America, Advent Health Advantage Plans, and Halifax Health, your support continues to be so important, and we really appreciate you making today possible, so thank you. And then without any other questions, we will wish you all a very happy holiday season and a prosperous new year. And with that, we are adjourned. So thanks, everybody.